Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie, the first book in the First Law trilogy. So, since this is the first book in the trilogy, we're kind of going to keep it mostly spoiler free because to be honest, there's not a whole lot to spoil. So, we're going to kind of, just keep it more or less spoiler free, but I'll let you know if there are some major spoilers. So, as always, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and let's begin. So, The Blade itself. This book is pretty interesting. It is definitely grimdark. I didn't really expect it to be like grimdark, but it's like, I mean, it's not as dark as I guess it could be, but I haven't read a book that's this descriptive about gore and like all the gross things about war and battle and like, this kind of living. And like, I don't know how long. Like, it's so explicit with just like the way it kind of goes about things. And it's kind of refreshing because it makes it feel like it's not censoring itself in a lot of ways, and the gore and stuff of it has this level of realism that's really interesting that you don't get out of a lot of fantasy books. So it's kind of got it's got a lot of points in that area for me. It's like it's the interesting part of it, but I'm a huge world building person, so I could read a story that has like no plot and just world building, and I'll be satisfied. Like Stephen King's book, or You Are, it has basically no plot at all. It's basically no plot in the story at all. It's just exploring the multiverse and like what if scenarios. And I find that incredibly fascinating and really, really enjoyable. So I can enjoy a book that basically has no plot and is just all world building. So when the story is basically all character and setup, but no world building or just very light world building, I'm kind of like, oh, like so. It's I don't want to say the book disappointed me because of that, but I am slightly disappointed that there isn't nearly as much world building as I personally prefer. But the character work in this book is purely about character work, and it is some of the most in-depth, deep, thorough character work I've seen done. Like every one of these characters feel incredibly real, and they're very, very incredibly well realized. Like it's very different than a lot of stuff. Like a lot of stuff that's kind of similar to this that draws from classic fantasy tropes. Like we have a barbarian and we have like a wizard character and we have like the classic kind of nobleman character and stuff. Like typically those characters will be written in such a way where the writer almost relies on tropes for you to kind of fill in the blanks and stuff. But this one is like, no, there is no filling in the blanks. We're giving you all the details. We're giving you their backstory. We're giving you their motivations again and again and again, which is probably a negative for me. A couple of the characters' motivation is like overly repeated. Like there's one character who dealt with like not so awesome stuff. Mild spoiler, but there's a character who's an inquisitor who was tortured in the past and kind of becomes a torturer. And almost every time this character is basically wearing this POV, you kind of get a reiteration of that past. So it's kind of like, okay, yes, we understand you went through that, but like we don't need you to continuously reiterate it and like how it affects what you're doing right now. So like it's helpful and it's cool to be in that person's mindset and we can understand how much it weighs on them because it's something incredibly terrible and like obviously life altering and shattering and stuff, but there's kind of an indulgence to it, the way it's kind of lingered on a lot. So it's kind of a negative, but ironically, that character, Glockda, is my favorite character in the story. It's so interesting to have my favorite character be like a very morbid character. So that's one of the interesting things that this book is also able to do. So I'm kind of all over the place right now, but let me kind of go back to generally summing up the story. Well, not really the plot or anything, but just summing up kind of how I feel about it. So yes, this story is very much a character story. We very much focus on these few specific characters. It doesn't really have a true protagonist. If anything, you could say there are three protagonists because one of them is arguably not a good person, like not at all, like not a good person. But we get their POV and we get to understand things from their perspective, being the person I was just talking about, the torturer. And it's really interesting. So we get that character and we get the classic barbarian character and we get the classic noble knight character. But none of them are exactly as we see these kind of people. So we kind of go through the book learning more about them, and then it's kind of doing this game of chess situation where you feel like this is going to be one of the most epic games of chess ever, but you have to watch the grandmaster sit there for 20 minutes strategically placing the pieces. So that's kind of what this feels like to me. it's all character development and placement for a greater story. There's like a war that kind of starts, but we're clearly setting up for these other wars, and there's just a lot more that is about to go on. So we just kind of sit with the characters. It feels like Joe Abercrombie really wanted us to understand these characters, their motivations, and the way they work and the way they think within the context of these political situations and everything, so that when these big things start happening later, that we will have like that way we can basically rely on the second hand of, oh, you already know this about this character, so you can expect this outcome. So instead of doing world building character, he's doing like all character and plot, and then going to the world. I hope, but then going to the world building, because I really hope we get some more world building, because there's a hint here at a softer magic system. And I'm really curious about that, because I typically really like hard magic systems. And this one could get harder, like it could get more like readily defined and stuff. But so far, what we've seen is very soft. So it's very like, ooh, wow, like very whimsical, almost Lord of the Rings esque. And this character that uses this type of magic is a very Lord of the Rings esque type character. So that's kind of an interesting parallel there too. So I'm really interested to see what's going to happen, but this book ultimately was not as enjoyable as I would have liked it to have been, mostly because, as I said, there's like very little true world building. I was left to kind of assume that we're in a classical medieval-ish kind of world, a little probably technologically beyond medieval, but kind of in that same kind of vein. So it feels ill-defined for me. So I need kind of more understanding, more definition of the world, more understanding of what's doable in this world, and like what are the flatheads and stuff like that. What are, like I just need more of the world building to match this really good character work that's being done. So I guess that's kind of my overall opinion of it. I like the story so far. I like these characters. They're very fascinating, and no one is like black or white. Everything is very gray. These characters are like, even like you have this classic nobleman kind of character. You would typically rely on a trope, like, okay, he's probably chivalrous and, nice and noble and all this stuff. Like, no, this guy is not that. Like, he is his own kind of person. He's this unique individual. So you can't really rely on the tropes to just fill in the gaps. You just kind of have to go through the plot and understand them. And by the time you get towards the end of the story, you really, really understand these characters. And so I guess I'm going to go ahead and jump into a bit of a spoiler section, because I do want to talk about something that happens at the end of the book, which came out of nowhere for me. So it's definitely a spoiler. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump into spoilers. So towards the end of the book, we kind of get a better understanding of the barbarian character, Logan Ninefingers. So he's called the Bloody Nine the whole time, and like all this kind of stuff. And like you get all this talk up about his reputation, like how just badass he is, how just ruthless and all of this kind of stuff. And we don't really see it. He gets into a whole lot of scrapes, and he just barely gets out by the skin of his teeth a lot. And like you can see that he is skilled, and he is like, knowledgeable, like he's a good warrior and all this kind of stuff. But it's nothing really living up to the hype that people are talking. And then he gets into this fight situation towards the end, and I understand it now. He goes full berserker. Like, he has a split personality situation where, like, the Bloody Nine, as a distinct personality, more or less, comes out. And he goes into a complete bloodlust rage where he feels no pain, and he just goes into complete and total mayhem. The person that was his ally that was fighting with him, he almost attacked her because he was just in such a blood frenzy mode. And then he kind of calms down. When he calms down, the personality of the Bloody Nine, he is mad, like he gets sleepy and stuff, and it feels like he's going to sleep, but he like gets mad about it as if he's being tucked away. So it makes it feel like a very distinct separate personality. And then Logan comes back as himself, and he feels all the pain of the situation, like all the injuries and stuff that the Bloody Nine was able to ignore. So I'm like, that along with his ability to speak to spirits the way he does, is that a part of like the magic system? Like, is there something, there's clearly something more to him with being able to speak to spirits, and that being like a very rare thing nowadays and stuff. Like, I don't know if that's very rare just because the magic is like seeping away from the world, or is it because it's just a very rare ability? Is this Bloody Nine Berserker thing tied to that? Is it something northern specific? Like, there's a lot of, these are like world building kind of questions that I have, and I really want to know what's the deal, what's going on. Let me know. I need the info. Let me know. So I guess that means I just got to go ahead and jump in the book too. I don't know when that review is going to come out. Maybe, I don't know, next month. I don't know, next month or two, something like that. it's going to be within the next couple months or so. But I'm going to go ahead and jump back into the Dark Tower now. After this, I want to catch up on the Dark Tower and see what's going on there with the Wolves of the Kala. Because if I remember correctly, that was my favorite one out of the series. So it'll be a lot of fun to read it again and then talk to you all about it. So yes, as always, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments down below. What did you think of the Blade itself? Have you read any of Joe Abercrombie stuff? I see at the end of this guy, we've got advertisements for more of his stuff. So yeah. So there's a bunch more than just this trilogy. So let me know if you read any more of his stuff. Let me know how you feel about it in the comments down below. Does this series pick up? If you've already read it, let me know. Don't spoil anything, but let me know, does it pick up with the world building and stuff? Will I really enjoy that later? Let me know about that in the comments down below. And as always, I will talk to you all next time. Peace.